Hello and welcome to ScreenHour with me, Kieran.
And me, Margaret.
And in this episode, we're finally going to be looking at The Boys, which is on Amazon. I say finally. It's only, a couple of days ago that the actual finale came out.
Yeah, we finished last Friday on the day of recording this. A covering of The Boys in general, but more particularly season 3, obviously.
Yeah, we'll like cover plot points and stuff, but it will be more of like a focus on season 3. I'm gonna lay it out in like the most simplest, dumbest way possible. The Boys is basically revenge with daddy issues in a very simple form. It's if superheroes weren't as good as we perceive them, they're actually behind the scenes. They're very narcissistic and very self-indulging. Yeah, and how they don't deal with their consequences. It's all like thrown under the rug, should I say?
To go off that point, it's superheroes. The only thing which is outlandish about this show is the powers themselves. The way people act is not outlandish or out this world at all. That's how it transposes. But yeah, The Boys is a lot of daddy issues, but we get more to particulars of that later on. But no, Kieran's right and wrong. That's one way of simplifying it, I suppose.
Yeah, in real simple terms. It's not gonna be everyone's cup of tea. That is an absolute granted, right? But if it's something that you can stick with and something that you can actually enjoy, no matter how vulgar or grotesque it may be, it is actually an incredible show, the way that it's done.
Like I said, I was writing my notes about it to discuss for the episode now. And the more I thought about it, the more I had no real negatives.
Yeah.
My only negatives were just could have done with more of this, or could have done with this earlier so we had more time to explore it.
It's a bit like eating a birthday cake and then being like, can I have more? It's like you had a whole birthday cake. You don't need more. Like, you know what I mean?
Particularly if you're a person who's feel like, oh, the MCU's getting a bit fucking boring now, or you feel like there's enough superhero stuff, but you feel like you want something which is going to rip into it, and you feel like it's going to be a bit more funny and outlandish. And more to the point, The Boys is like nothing else on TV at the moment.
No.
And so it's definitely worth a watch. But if you're listening now, like we should have done this really in non-spoilers, but definitely recommend it. It's great.
Well, what I can do is I can edit this bit in before we do spoilers.
Yeah. But if you want to fancy something a bit mental, a bit funny, a bit gruesome, a bit wrong, it's essentially The Boys, as in the core cast of the characters it follows, are trying to keep a handle on the superheroes who aren't particularly heroic, as we've just touched on, and make sure they're not total dicks how they are, and they're not abusing their power and murdering at free will and whatever, which many of them do. And from the get-go, from the very first episode, we introduced to Huey, who's a bit of a wet flannel per se, and his will gets turned upside down by a reckless superhero, and he gets introduced then to Carl Urban's character Billy Butcher, and he just flows on from there. The best thing about it, and this is more to the point of when it's chosen to be released, and the references and the writing it makes, is number one, this is based on source material by Garth Ennis. The Boys is based on a comic book. Is that it came out at the height of the superhero genre's popularity. So we're on season 3 now, and season 1 came out in 2019, and it's when Infinity War, about Endgame, had just came out, I think. And so it has a lot of references which would have been not deep cuts. That's a bit of a niche point, which would have been harder to make reference to. About 20 years ago, the audience wasn't there, but now it is. When it's talking Soldier Boy's a blatant reference to Captain America, Homelander's Superman. So like, but all of the characters it makes a riff on, and which are inspired by, everybody knows now. So the reference would like really land and hit home.
Yeah, I think what this show does differently to all the other superhero shit you see is that it has no rules. There is nothing too grotesque. There is nothing beyond the line. There is no line they will not cross. Anything can happen and anything goes, and it's really sort of made its own niche as a TV show in that retrospect, because to be part of an episode like it is very vulgar, it's very brutal, right? But then all of a sudden there'll be some fucking musical number, and then a few moments later there'll be some like cartoon head trip with one of the characters, like proper like hand drawn cartoon. It's completely wacky and out there, but at the same time it completely works and it completely fits in the show. And I can't see any other show doing it. It's the way they've created it, the way they've written it, is there is no boundaries for them. They can do what they want to do, sort of thing.
So for what it's worth, like a lot of things, I do 100% agree with you. The only like show, like superhero show, which was like X-rated and like had pushed the envelope for like being mature, apart from that was like the Netflix shows, like Daredevil, Punisher and such, and Jessica Jones. But those were like totally different in the sense that as much as I love Daredevil and Punisher, and like to a degree Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, not so much on Fist, is that they were more like, they had chuckle moments and they had emotional moments, and it was like pure violence. But this, like you've just touched on, it's hilarious with like dark humour. It's like pretty emotional when it needs to be. And the violence, like, there's a lot of like gross and like bloody violence, but it does like it never feels OTT. And there's like the sexual stuff is like it's wrong when it needs to be wrong in the point where it's like it's disturbing or like you're feeling bad watching it. It's visceral. But when it's like fun and jokey episode, which the episode we obviously everyone's referring to is Hero Gasm, that's an absolute pure gold episode. But as you say, like I don't think no other show I watched recently is as quite as funny and out there as this.
Well, I can tell you for nothing right now. This is a bit of a spoiler, and if you get squeamish or whatever, you like close your ears for a second. But no show has ever, in the entirety of life ever, had a guy shrink himself down into Ant-Man size, go inside the hole of a penis, the bit that you pee out of. He then sneezes, forcing him to become like normal size again, and explodes this guy from the inside. So it's meant to be like a sexual thing, but he's been doing cocaine or something. So he sneezes and he blows this guy from the inside out. And you see everything. You see everything. So I can guarantee you now, this is not something you have ever seen before. But at the same time, like as horrid and grotesque and vulgar that is, it actually fits in the show. Like it's the way the show is done that it just you see that happen and you're kind of like, oh, what the fuck? But at the same time, you're like, well, it's not out of place.
It really hits the ground running, and like funny, like about that section we just discussed. And I'll probably talk about this moment of the week. I watched like Thor and Love and Thunder with a group of friends, and one of those group of friends is like
group of friends. Where's my invite?
You would have killed me. I know you don't love it, and also you see far. But one of those group of friends is like a really good Christian boy, Kieran.
Another Kieran.
Don't get too jealous. And he was talking.
And replace me with another Kieran.
Another Kieran. So I says to him about, like, have you been watching The Boys? Because we're watching a superhero film. And he says, no, I ain't watched it. He said, I've heard of it. I said, you do really need to watch it. As I said, like, he's a very prim and proper bloke. And he mentions, I says, oh, what do you think of Doctor Strange as well? He says, he thinks Doctor Strange was good. he says, but he thought that was a bit gruesome, a bit like scary, like. And I said, scary and gruesome. I said, so that's got nothing on the boys. And I explained that like the section you just spoke about now. And he just looked at me in horror. And I was like, well, I suppose you would really, because if you think Sam Raimi's Evil Dead is a bit scary, and Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange is a bit scary and like a bit horrific, you're definitely going to think that's a bit bad. But no, I literally showed that one section to my dad, who's watched the first season of The Boys, and he was just like, son, that is fucking mental.
It's too far.
Well, this thing is absolute gold. One of my favourite points about it is its creative use of superpowers and like the action scenes themselves. And that scene definitely falls within creative use of superpowers.
Yeah. Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, and what I like about the show as well is how they're not afraid to take the piss out of the real life concurrent events, things that are happening in society today. They sort of shine a light on it, and they don't mind. They're not afraid to take a piss out of it. Such as if anyone remembers the Kendall Jenner advert where there's like a big riot or something going on, and she takes like a can of Coke or a bottle of Coke or something over to one of the riot guys, right? And it's like, oh yeah, like it's all peace now, right? They basically do that exact scene with A-Train when he's trying to reestablish his own image again, and he's trying to like invigorate who he is as a character, and he basically does this scene to sort of sell his superhero persona, and straight away I was like, they're absolutely ripping into Kendall Jenner right now, because everyone ripped into the advert saying that what a load of bollocks that was, and they did the exact same advert. And then there was another bit later on, I think, when they were bringing out Maeve as part of the LGBTQ community, and how they used her outing, and the way that they did it was to raise numbers, because we're now diverse because we got ourselves one part that's part of that community. And it was the way that they do it in the show is just it just shines a light on society on a whole, of how we actually deal with things on a day to day, and it just makes it seem, because this show itself, as we've described, is so absurd in the way that it does certain things, that when this happens, that it's like, oh wait, that's absurd as well, but wait, that's actually happening in real life.
One of like my bits I'd say is, if somebody would say to me, is it an action TV show or is it a satire? And I could only choose those two bits. Or like, satire is one of the best words to describe it. Really is the way, as you've touched on, it takes the piss out of so many like current and topic events, but also there isn't an episode which goes by which doesn't take the piss out of like a political view or real life figures, as you say, like whether it be like adverts or whatever. It's not just taking the piss, which is good, but also a lot of like social commentary base. It's just a fun way of just telling the audience, why don't you, at the risk of quoting Michael Jackson here, look in the mirror and like think what the hell's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Because that's what he does a lot, and he does it really well. Sometimes it's a bit on the nose, but when it is on the nose, that's when it's most funny.
Yeah.
Whether it be that A-Train like scene you mentioned or whatever. There's so much of it.
There's so much that it's trying to remember all the different nuances and how they handle the different scenes, especially because, as we said, it's 3 seasons, there's 8 episodes a season, they're hour long each episode. So trying to remember everything to bring into context right now is a little bit difficult. But that is something I remember seeing, and I was like, I need to remember that when we do the episode, because I thought that was jokes.
In a similar point, this isn't like an incredibly hot take, but without getting into mega spoilerific bits, which we all do soon, is Homelander throughout like the entire, so far seasons 1 and 2, and definitely 3. He has Superman's powers, and the worst thing about it is, he has Superman's powers, but every man and his dog knows Superman's like weakness is kryptonite or the different shades of how it changes it. Homelander doesn't even have that. But like, he is a lot more mentally unstable.
His weakness is being part human.
Yeah,
that's his weakness. That is his emotions are his weakness.
The way how damaged he is, but more so than ever in season 3, there's a lot of parallels to Trump. Like, and how he slowly, more so than ever, becomes a dictator.
More so in season 3, he becomes a dictator. He's sort of working from the shadows a bit more in 1 and 2, but in season 3, he's coming a bit more to the forefront.
Yeah, now, more than ever, he's snapping at people when people aren't even like trying to undermine him. They're just bringing something to his attention or asking him something. And he's like saying to him, "You think they're better than me? You're not think you're embarrassing yourself." And he's just absolutely like demoralising them, making them feel like shit. And they're not even doing anything.
They bring up sort of valid points, valid questions, but because he's not smart enough to understand how to respond to that, to give them the intellectual answer, he then belittles them. Because, you know, no one's above me. I am better. I am smarter. I'm stronger. You know, to quote his speech.
Yeah. So what it does really well is, on top of that, and this is something they've done in seasons 1 and 2 and 3, is, like we just touched on with modern day and satire, social commentary, is the way it includes stuff which could happen so easily in real life with like social media also. So one of the main things
that does play a big part, social media, doesn't it?
Yeah. So Instagram is referred to quite a lot in the entire series, but like it has a very pivotal point in the penultimate episode of this season. And then in season 2, I remember like one of the big things, like Stormfront sits Anthony Starr down Homelander and says about using memes to advantage, essentially. Like she schools him on how to use memes, like how to fuel off the haters. That's another like pretty fucked up bit, which is absolutely gold. Like run it like, again, this is more like spoilerific for season 2. But I remember I know you want to elaborate on this after, because you spoke to me about it when I said like you want us to catch up on season 2 and we can go to season 3. There's basically a shooter bit in season 2 of how I think the actor's from a Community, and he plays Fat Neil, bless him, he's a good actor. And he follows Stormfront. He's absolutely loving Stormfront. He's following like all her like propaganda on the internet, her social media following, and everybody else. And he's in the Reddit forum, or sorry, not the Reddit forum, but the boys equivalent to and such. And he gets rolled up, and you keep seeing a montage of him doing the same thing over and over again.
His daily commute, where he's seeing the same people every day, but he's so slowly becoming more and more suspicious of them, thinking that any one of these people could be a superhero terrorist.
Well, so he's getting really angry, and he's getting more and more influenced. And then snaps and like shoots the shopkeeper, doesn't he?
Yeah, he shoots the shopkeeper, thinking, because it was. I think he saw a glint or something in the shopkeeper's eye one morning, but it happened to be like the headlights of a car or the way the sun reflected off something, and it made a glint, and it made him think that he was a superhero terrorist. So the next day he just walks in, like he's terrified, he's shaking, but because of all the propaganda that's been pushed out by Stormfront, he believes that this shopkeeper is this terrorist, and he just shoots him point blank range in the face. And obviously he's just a normal guy, he's just running his store, and he just dies. And it was just that scene in itself. I mean, the point you're getting at there is just how realistic that is in today's society, particularly the news we hear coming out of America all the time. Like, it is ridiculous how realistic that is, because that was the beginning of one of the episodes, and it didn't give us any context whatsoever. We didn't know who these characters were. It was just like a little mini story at the beginning before it went into characters that you knew. And it was just the way it was done, the way it was filmed. It was horrible, and in the realistic sense of it. But for TV entertainment, it was brilliant the way it was done.
As you say, like the reason it's felt like that is because it didn't feel alien.
No.
Like we've said, is that the only like unrealistic thing about the show is not the characters' motivations or the characters themselves. It's just the things these characters can do, like run at super speed or like fly or like laser beams or super strength. That's the only unrealistic thing. The situations they're in and the MacGuffins, shall we say, that's unrealistic, but not some of the like the story beats at all.
No.
Like, just to speak more broadly before we get into spoilers for this season, another great thing, and this goes off like the characters themselves, is just how solid the cast is in general.
Yeah.
There's not a mainstay on the cast which you watch it and feel like they're phoning in or they're not as convincing. Again, I don't want to say he carries the show because that's wrong. Like, there's a lot of good performances in it.
Yeah.
But definitely he's a great actor. He's Anthony Starr's Homelander. He's amazing.
Yeah, he is the face of the show, but he wouldn't be who he is without all of the ensemble around him. You know, it's just the way the show is done. You know, it focuses on Homelander. Like, if there was no Homelander, there would be no show.
Yeah. And I know similar to the comics, as you say, like Homelander, he follows him because he's one of the most interesting characters because he's the most fucked up and he's also the most powerful, which inherently makes him really fucked up. But he's absolutely smashed it. I've mentioned it, plenty of times. Not to sound like a professional podcast, but off air to many people. And whenever I talk about the boys, I always say this. Angie Starr had another like cult, not cult, but I refer to it as cult because I don't know many people who have watched it because it's absolutely cool. He's a show called Banshee, and he plays a small town sheriff who becomes a sheriff by accident. And he essentially has good morals, but he's a bank robber and he was in the special forces or whatever. So he doesn't do things by the book at all. And it's just him dealing with gangsters in this small American town. And he's the sheriff, and he's the main star of that show. And he's great in that. That's the only other thing I've seen him in. And a sketch show for about 20 minutes. But he's absolutely gold, Anthony Starr. Incredibly, like, he's funny. He like loads of scenes in a messed up way. He's brutal and he's like savage. He's like quite threatening. But not just to talk about Anthony Starr, like what is a performance I really enjoy. Especially should be praised because she doesn't speak English. She's Karen Fukunaga who plays Kimiko.
I was about to say Kimiko is my favourite character of the whole show.
Yeah, I think she brings a real nuance, like wholesome performance.
Yeah.
In a show where like you've mentioned, like people like burst out of people's cocks and heads get popped off and whatever. She brings like a really like warm vibe to the show.
Yeah, she's innocent yet absolutely brutal.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Erin Moriarty as Starlight, she is like contrast to Homelander. She's one of the few like characters in the show who's an actual superhero who does heroic things.
Yeah.
And like has been from the get-go, which is absolutely gold.
Yeah, she's like a good person at heart.
Carl Urban is gold in it. Those other characters are in it.
Jack Quaid plays Huey.
Quaid's absolutely gold.
Yeah.
It's Huey.
You got Frenchie, you got Mother's Milk.
Frenchie. Mother's Milk especially. And this isn't like slagging off Frenchie, but he's the only one, like you might totally disagree, this season who I think hasn't had the best storyline. Although Frenchie's, like, not to get into spoilers already, Frenchie's storyline and story beats like are very interwoven with like Kimiko's this season. But compared to Mother's Milk's like storyline and his acting, I couldn't get enough of Mother's Milk's storyline.
Yeah, Mother's Milk storyline was it was a bit rushed and a bit overlooked because obviously it was all about getting Soldier Boy, but everyone just sort of ignored his plea to do that. And then right at the end of literally the final episode of the season, he sits down with his daughter and explains his beef with Soldier Boy, and that's in like a 3-minute scene, and that's like him wrapped up basically. so he was kind of thrown to the sidelines. But
No, I think it was rushed. I think it showed it. I know what you mean in the sense that it only had 3 minutes to tie it up. But I might as well get to spoilers now.
yeah, go straight into spoilers then.
So yeah, spoilers for season 3 completely included.
And season 2 and season 1.
I think it built up to like Mother's Milk storyline really well. And when he like Frenchie sits him down, I think it's actually at the start of the finale, and he says to him, "You need to like show Janine, that's it, his daughter's name, isn't it, Janine? Like your whole self, and like don't be ashamed. It's part of you." That could have been doing with in the penultimate episode, as you say, and that like scene he had could have been 10 minutes at the very most, or maybe less than that, like 7 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's weird. There's some parts of the show, and like as a caveat, I know like it's very easy for me to sit and talk about this and have a podcast review about criticising work in like with my bedroom, but there's a lot of it could do with like chopping some bits off in the show in general, trimming the fat for more emotional scenes.
Yeah, there is a lot of sort of over sort of I do feel they put a bit more work and effort into the grotesque scenes than into the emotional sort of scenes. But I do feel I do stand by my point that I felt like Mother's Milk's storyline was rushed a bit this season, because if you think about it, Frenchie and Kimiko, right, their storyline that like you can remember almost all of the beats of her storyline and Frenchie's storyline, of dealing with Nina and then losing her powers and then being in hospital and then getting kidnapped and all of that. You remember all of those beats. Mother's Milk, all I remember him being was like a little pissed off with Billy. He fucked off back home. He then punches Todd, right? And then he's back with the boys again. And then he wants to gas Soldier's Boy, but he can't, or something. I can't quite remember that bit now. And then they sort of defeat Soldier Boy. He's back into cryo sleep. And then Mother's Milk is like, "Oh, Janine, this is your granddaddy. He was an important person. He was a real hero." And that's it. You know what I mean? It's not as interesting.
Yeah, I think it was interesting, but I think it could have just done more. I really liked it. I thought like the actor playing Mother's Milk, I think his name is Lance something.
I'm not slagging him off or his performance or anything. Like, his storyline is still good. It's just compare it to everyone else. He was, pushed to the side a bit.
Yeah, I have a similar problem with Frenchie's though, because Frenchie's I've got over the hill like a piece of the like closure bit is him kicking off with Billy at the end of the like, season 3 and saying, "Oh, you can't tell me what to do or whatever. I want vacation days," and it becomes like gets played as more of a joke because no one takes it seriously at the time. Like Kimiko's one, I find it was more therapeutic, had more closure, but that I feel like Frenchie's never really.
Yeah, I do connect with Kimiko more than I connected with Frenchie. But it's the Kimiko-Frenchie relationship that I'm there for.
Oh, exactly. So that's what I mean. It's weird. As I said, they're so interwoven in the sense that one of the reasons like Kimiko's so wholesome and like the reasons Frenchie's so good is you like, as you say, you're there for their relationship.
Yeah.
And how it like, blossoms and how they're there for each other. But like it's weird because I find to not get like mega critique of it, because as you can say, it's one of the very few shows, and I sit down and watched it every Friday. It was that and Obi-Wan Kenobi recently. I've watched as soon as I can, as soon as I've got home.
Yeah, like you're like religiously at a prime time sort of thing.
Yeah, I was just really excited to watch it. Like last Friday, I literally, as soon as I could, I watched the finale. But the biggest problem I'd have with it is, like we've just touched on, is nothing's particularly bad, just needed more of it, or needed to be introduced earlier. So something we've not really touched on is one of the main things of this season is obviously Soldier Boy. And I think Soldier Boy, the casting's great. I know I haven't watched Supernatural, and apparently, like, I'm one of the few people who haven't. I don't know if you have, Kieran.
Nope.
But Supernatural apparently is amazing. He's one of the main. He's like one of the two main characters in it. And I didn't know this, but this is obviously one of the reasons he was cast. Not just because he's great, but also the showrunner of The Boys. I think his name's Jed or something. He showrun the first 4 seasons of Supernatural. So basically, he's best buds with Jensen Ackles, who plays Soldier Boy. So yeah, he got his foot in the door, well and truly there. But I think Soldier Boy's a complex, messed up character. He has a lot of riffs on the Steve Rogers archetype in the sense that Steve Rogers in the MCU, he comes out of the status and cryoisogenic and is nothing but wholesome to the new world. Like, the only jokes the MCU makes about that is in Winter Soldier in particular. He has a book where it's like things he has to catch up on, and like a lot of it is like film references and music and things like that.
I'll put it on the list.
Yeah, exactly. I'll put it on the list, Sparky. But what they do here, which is really good, is, and this would happen, and even to like old people we know, and like, you know, our friend, my grandparents under the bus, is that they're like particularly not, let's say, not particularly woke, and that's what happens with Soldier Boy. Do you know what I mean? They're like, he comes out and he's saying things like racist remarks, and he's saying, "Oh, they shouldn't. Why are men dressed like this? Or what pussy holes, or like whatever like that."
Why do men have emotions and stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, like I remember like some other film journalist on one of the YouTubes that I've seen, like, compared to like the character of Soldier Boy refers to like the strong silent type, of like who Tony Soprano refers to in the pilot of Sopranos. But MCU Steve Rogers doesn't do that because he's wholesome. They're painting the the good archetype of like a good guy. But as we say, the strong thing about The Boys and the best thing about it is that it's what would happen in real life if these people were real. And if you took a bloke out from the 40s and you reanimated him now, you'd be like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
And like, at the risk of like, this is me like saying, I don't want to cancel myself here. I know like a podcast 30 people would listen to, but you know, this is what I'd think this person would say. But they're like, why is there like 5 different genders, or why is this person would come out of like cryo status and say, why have women like been president, been prime ministers, or why is so why is like what segregation and things like that? They would be like shocked. So the way Soldier Boy reacts to that is gold, especially like one of my favourite bits, and it's a bit of a throwaway line, but I think that's what makes it so good, is the Bill Cosby joke when he refers to Bill Cosby as being the best father figure on TV, which is #1 goal joke in itself after everything came alive. And then the other throwaway line is, "Oh, I used to make some really strong drinks."
Yeah, and the way Huey reacts to that line, he's like, "Oh shit."
So Soldier Boy is gold, but again, to get really nitpicky about it, he comes in at the end of episode 3 or 4. He comes in like halfway through the series, and he should have been introduced in, I think, at the end of episode 2 or something. We should have had more time with him.
Yeah, and Stormfront died a bit too quickly as well. Stormfront seemed like she was going to be the bad guy for the season, but then she was killed off quite quickly, and it was actually Soldier Boy that was the actual bad guy of the season. But he's also not the bad guy because he works with the team, and he's the bad guy in the last like half hour of the final episode, should I say.
Exactly. That's what I like about it. But yeah, no, you bring up a really good point with Stormfront. But I know it's shocking. #1, like, to be fair, I didn't expect her to be alive. When it shows her and she's in the hospital.
Yeah, when she's in the hospital, yeah, she was fucked. I didn't expect to see that scene either.
She threw me a loop there, which was good. But I thought she was going to be like, not like Homelander, who particularly needs it, but she was going to be the Nazi/devil on his shoulder, talking to him more and like corrupting him more. What I thought would have been gold, as you say.
Yeah, I actually liked her backstory of how she was actually a Nazi, you know, and how she had a daughter and and all that, and her, I think it was it her daughter was the first one that got the V, or was she the first one that got the V?
I think she was the first one who got
She was the first one that got the V. I liked her backstory because if you had imagined Stormfront meeting Soldier Boy, who went against the Nazis, that would have been very interesting.
Yeah, because apparently, like, he makes a reference in the Hero Gasm episode about him shagging her, about him shagging Stormfront.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Oh, I completely glanced over that. That's jokes.
Which is absolutely gold.
So hold on, Stormfront's Homelander's mum.
There was a theory going on about that, which was absolutely gold, which I thought would have been jokes. Because it would have been very fucked up in a typical boys' fashion.
Yeah, that'd have been like Back to the Future, wouldn't it? Like...
Yeah. What I really think they should have done, and again, it's like more of a criticism of how like good it is, and they should have explored this, is like I was saying, if they introduced Soldier Boy earlier, and the Hero Gasm episode is absolutely great. As I said, it's creative, it's messed up. Superheroes would have like those type of mad orgy things.
Yeah.
And like it's funny and like, you know.
It's definitely an episode you'd enjoy, definitely.
But like
Like, you watched episode 5 yet? I was like, no, I haven't yet. It's like, it's the best one yet. And I watched it and I was like, yeah, this is why Mikey likes this one.
That's episode, the finale, like the last bit of that episode where Homelander's getting jumped by Soldier Boy, here we have Billy. That should have happened earlier. And the reason I'm saying that is because Homelander should have had more of a kick in. I think he should have really got absolutely wrecked. Because he hasn't.
Yeah, and have more of like a Rocky montage where he needs to like build himself back up.
Well, pretty much, yeah. Because he should have really had a kick in. Like he should have like really got battered and escaped with his just by his life. Because we're 3 seasons in, and he hasn't like really got battered at all.
Well, you could argue in his fight with Maeve at the end of season 3, where he gets jabbed in the ear with a like a pen or something. Is it or? I thought it was chopsticks, to be honest, but I think it might have been a pencil or a
metal
pen.
shard, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's my point.
Like, that's really the most injured you've seen him.
And that's it. That's like as you say, that's just like his eardrum getting smashed.
Has that like regenerated, or has he actually lost hearing in that? We don't know that.
No, he got his hearing back. I thought that would have been cool if he ended up being deaf.
Yeah.
I would have thought that would have been really good, like. But no, he just doesn't. So, like you're saying, he could have had like a Rocky montage, or just more of like a psychological like breakdown of him, like an episode where like he's talking with himself. Then that episode where he's in the mirror.
Yeah, he's doing the Green Goblin to himself. He's doing the.
So he's doing a bit of a Norman Osborn. That could have been, because I know directly in his episode, the episode after he had his kick in, but that could have been like when he's really fucked up. He could have had his arm broken.
We need a few more mirror scenes, don't we? Really, so we can really see how fucked up he is. I mean, we can already see it already, but we really need to dive into his mind a lot more.
Yeah, I think Noir should have got killed by Homelander when it was Soldier Boy versus like Noir, or some like type of element like that. So what I mean, so Homelander could have chosen between like his dad and Noir could have got blamered then.
Oh, done like a Sophie's Choice.
Yeah. So like it's built up that like Homelander really loves Noir. Homelander thinks like Noir's never going to betray him.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I think what could have happened there, as opposed to like him having that breakdown, he just like he says, "You lied to me" or whatever, you knew all this time, and then he fucks him up. It could have happened where they could have had a plan that Homelander is the bait, and then Noir tries to like sneak up on Soldier Boy and stab him, or like because he isn't the ninja. Then Homelander backs out then, and then like kills Noir in front of his dad, try and show him loyalty and like sucker up to him. That could have been really good.
Yeah.
Noir's cartoon like psyche head scenes were really creative. As opposed to just flashbacks. I think they were gold. Like I know we had the flashback on like the second episode with Payback, and I thought that was gold. These like animals and critters were like a really funny, were like quite emotional, weird way.
And their theatre scene that the cartoons did, I actually really enjoyed that because it was very informative.
Oh yeah, it does the job, as you say. It really just like
it wasn't there for just silly purposes. It actually had a purpose. It actually drove the story narrative. So yeah, I'm all for it when it drives the story narrative. But I think if I'm gonna look at a gripe of mine, a negative, and I've thought about this a lot and tried to think of reasons why, but why was Billy Butcher constantly pounding temporary V when Starlight clearly could get access to the permanent V? Why didn't he get permanent V? And my reason is because he's Billy Butcher and he doesn't want to become a soup. He's all, you know, his whole being is about destroying soups. They should never exist because soups are manufactured by this chemical compound known as V, right? But he keeps taking the the green V, which is the temporary V, in order to defeat the superheroes. But the more he's using that, the more it's making his brain all mushy and he's like dying inside, basically. But if he takes the permanent shit, right, he can become a soup basically forever. He can keep killing soups, not take any damage, and then when he feels like he doesn't want to be a soup anymore and he's killed all the soups, he can then use Soldier Boy to help him remove his powers. So I was a little bit like, why doesn't he not take the blue shit? Why does he keep taking the green shit?
Yeah, exactly.
So I've justified it in my own head, but I don't know if it's because I've overanalyzed it to justify it so it makes sense, or that it just doesn't make sense and it's something that they overlooked. I don't know.
No, I think you're right. The very fact that you have to do that is like they should have expositioned it more or whatever. So, or like explain Billy's reasoning or motivations to take the temporary one. Because even in the exact same episode where he's taking temp V, you see Kimiko get her powers back.
Yeah.
And like to your point, like to their credit, I hadn't really thought about it much. I thought about it a little bit, but now you've highlighted it. It does make no sense. Kimiko's not the only person who gets temporary V.
Permanent V.
Victoria Newman, her daughter, she gives it to her daughter.
Yeah.
So, like, that's one of two characters you've seen in the show this season who have took permanent V and been fine.
Yeah.
So you think, as you say, I think it's because he doesn't want to be hypocritical and like kill like superpower beings and be one himself. But if he's taking the temporary one, it's, as you say, he's got no leg to stand on.
Yeah, he's still crossing the line. He just doesn't want to fully commit to crossing over the line. But he's actually making things worse for himself. But in that same vein, I do like the idea of him only having 12 to 18 months left to live. So at the end of this season, we find out he's only got 12 to 18 months left to live because he keeps taking the temporary V. And basically, he's going to die. So how are they going to take that forward in season 4? Is he going to die halfway through, or is he going to die at the end of the season? But he finally completes his objective, or where they're going to go with that is going to be interesting.
I think season 4 will be the end one, unless I think the end of the show will be when Homelander dies and Billy Butcher dies.
Yeah, because you can't really go on without them.
I don't know how the comic book ends.
Yeah.
I know like a few main beats of the comic book. I know that, like, if you're remotely looking on YouTube and on the internet for like a little bit about the boys, the biggest, like, one of the biggest spoilers, and again I'm about to spoil like a big cool like twist in the comic book, is Black Noir in the comic books is a clone version of Homelander, like an identical clone. Spoilers, like most clones identical, but he's the one who rapes Becca. So it's not even.
Oh.
It's not even the actual right Homelander. And the reason Black Noir Homelander is a thing is that it's a Homelander, which is even more fucked up. But like, he was created to be available and to steer towards if the other Homelander breaks and turns on Vought. But that's revealed like throughout, like, I think it's like halfway through the series or whatever. But in this, as you can clearly see, it's a totally different Black Noir.
Yeah,
and he's got his own characterization, and like, he's dead now. But that's something which is really cool. And like, as you say, it's just an example why, like, they, just because you know the comic book
doesn't mean
you know the show like the back of your hand.
Yeah. I think if they're gonna kill Homelander and Billy Butcher off or whatever, if it's not the last episode of the season, it might be 2 or 1 episode before the end of the season, just so like the next episode or the episode after they can like wrap it up. But I can't see them going like a season without them because they're just too pivotal. But I mean, I want to get right onto the conclusion of the season, to be honest, because the ending to the season was, oh my god. I don't know how to describe my feelings towards it because I thought it was brilliant, but at the same time, it was like the biggest eye roll because basically there's a whole big backlash of supporters. So there's people that support Starlight, or there's people that support Homelander, and there's like big rallies and stuff going on and protests in the streets.
In very typical satire fashion, you're totally right. With like in the real world, there's no middle ground. With these protesters, they're rather far left or far right.
Black or white, there's very little grey, it seems to be these days. And in this instance, Homelander flies on down to his Homelander supporters and he's like, hello, everybody, blah, 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 and say hello to my son. And he brings down Ryan, and all the supporters are like, whoa, Homelander has a son, right? And then one of Starlight's supporters lob like a bottle or a can or something at the kid Ryan, and Homelander, without a hesitation, laser eyes this guy into pieces, right? And the audience just falls quiet. And Homelander's been threatening to do this for 3 seasons, just to kill in front of people and leave witnesses. He wants them to know how powerful he is. You should see him as a god and you should be at his mercy, right? And he finally does it in front of everyone, and you're like, oh shit, he fucked up. And in the most, I hate to say it, but in the recent events of the way that America is currently going with its Second Amendment, and at the same point, this is Todd, and Todd is Janine's stepfather, Mother's Milk's daughter's stepfather. And the way he sort of he's the first one that then cheers Homelander, like, yeah, fuck the people that disagree with us. And then everyone else cheers, yeah, we're with Homelander, This is, and I think they say something like, this is America, and this is how America should be run, or something like that, along those lines. And it was like, I thought, holy shit, they really fucking piggybacked on this Second Amendment rights thing in America right now, and they've really sort of fucking just gone straight in with it. I was like, wow, well done. Like, this is really interesting to watch as a TV show. But then the eye roll of, oh my god, this is literally fucking real life. Oh my god, I'm watching this as entertainment thinking, holy shit, that's like impressive. That's insane. But then on the other hand, it's like, that is literally what America is dealing with right now.
Yeah, but to go off your point, them being so to the extreme, yeah, it's not a gun law or whatever, but it's just an example of how I think they're going backwards. Is the abortion law?
Yeah,
that's so fucked up that's like.
I can't fathom it. I don't understand how that's a thing.
An archaic way of thinking, but they've just re-implanted it. Like, they've put it back in. Like, yeah. That's like, we're in fucking 2020. That's such a fucked up way of looking at things.
Don't forget the other 2 years.
Yeah, we're in 2022. Exactly. Don't forget those 2 years as much as we want to forget in good old COVID. But it's mental and so wrong that you should have those views now. Like, you should want to control women that much and their bodies or whatever. I don't want to get into particularly a political podcast, but as I say,
yeah, no one person should be able to decide the fate of another. We should all be allowed to do what we want, how we want, where we want. We should be able to decide our own fates. But the way that this has now become a law is it is ridiculous.
Homelander turning into a dictator who feels like he can do whatever he wants, and he's got the support now. It's, as I said, it's not too extreme.
No.
From IRL, as you explained, I really enjoyed the aspect of him getting cheated. As I say, I think that could possibly, it pretty much happened. It's not, it's Donald Trump made a reference of saying he could like shoot somebody in broad daylight and people would support him. I think he said once, I'm paraphrasing it, but he said something similar. But the only problem I had with it is Ryan. All of a sudden, he wants to be with Homelander now.
I think it's because of the way Billy treated him. I think
There wasn't enough scenes between Ryan and Billy Butcher and Homelander. There wasn't the dynamic of like battling for Ryan. And I know like they're building up for that's going to be the main focus for the season 4. But there wasn't enough. It wasn't a gut punch when Ryan chose Homelander, because you had that quite cute scene over Skype where he makes that Lego animation over Becca's voice. Fun fact, me and Kim spoke about this a few times. We're a big fan of Apex. Lady who plays Becca voices Rafe off Apex Legends. But
Chantal Van. Oh shit, Van something. I can't remember. Sorry.
So that's quite emotional when Ryan shows like Billy Butcher that, and then they have the scene where like he promises it, but then literally like 3 episodes deep into so less than halfway through, Billy pushes him away. Then like says, "Leave me alone." He gets really pissed off at him. He says, "Well, maybe I don't want to look at you. The reason Becca's dead, or whatever." But he should have tried to make amends more with Ryan or whatever.
It's because of the way Billy treated him there, sort of saying, the reason Becca's dead, right? And then when Homelander visits Ryan again, he finds him, and then he's like, I didn't, he's like, I don't blame you for her death, right? And that's all Ryan wanted to hear. That's what he wanted.
I know that.
Homelander gave him that, and that's, it happened a bit quick, I will admit. Like, it happened a bit quick, but then, we don't, I think the showrunners know, on the whole, we don't want too many scenes without any, like, sadist shit. We want to see Homelander being an absolute dick. We don't want to just keep seeing mushy love scenes with the kid. You know what I mean?
I think we do that. Well, I do, in the sense that it's so Homelander finds him at the beginning of episode 8. And that's the final episode. And in that same episode, Ryan then chooses Homelander over Billy just because that one scene you've just highlighted, you've just discussed. Just because he says, I don't know, like humans are like that. You say that one thing people need to hear, then all of a sudden they're your best bud, and they love you to bits because it's what you needed to hear. But I think they could have had another scene or two together, Homelander or Ryan then.
Yeah.
Because the next time you see him, and it wasn't a surprise because the episode started like this, is when Homelander brings him out when he's getting jumped, when he knows the odds are against him, because he sees Maeve's there and Kimiko and of course Soldier Boy, and he's like, "Oh, I'm fucked it," and he says, "Look, it's your grandson." Yeah. That wasn't a surprise, and he pulls him out the curtain.
No, that wasn't a surprise at all. But what was a surprise actually was how Soldier Boy didn't then decide to team up with Homelander. That was actually very interesting. Because
I thought that was interesting. Yeah, I agree with that.
The twist wasn't the twist you thought it was. Because you thought the twist was Soldier Boy would join Homelander, but the actual twist was Billy joined Homelander to defeat Soldier Boy. But only for that scene. Like, they're not best buds, it's because they were trying to protect Ryan. But
yeah, it's even that bit when they both look at each other after both like laser beaming it, and they don't even smile. They just like nod at each other.
I don't think they nod. I think they just look at each other, and it's just like they look into each other's soul, and they know what each other's thinking.
Yeah, as you say, it's a different twist of what you're thinking, and there's another good really. It's rather on the nose, and like the support Huey chooses to give Starlight, as opposed to just using Tempy again to save her and teleport, is a cool decision. And it shows potential of Starlight's powers as well. It
shows growth and character arc for Huey.
As you say, it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. It shows the potential of Starlight's powers and like how badass she can be and how good of a character she is. And as you say, it just shows the growth of Huey, realising he doesn't have to be,
Yeah, he doesn't need to be stronger.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be strong in the sense of, I'm physically strong and physically badass to be badass.
Yeah.
Which I think He could have done with more Simon Pegg. I know he's doing Mission Impossible like 25 or whatever it is, or 7. But he could have been in it. Because I know that scene.
Oh, Simon Pegg.
What do you say, sorry?
You Simon P, and I was like, who the fuck Simon P? You mean Simon Pegg? Yeah.
Yeah, Simon Pegg, that's what I'm saying, yeah. So he could have been in it, because he's really good.
Was he in this season at all?
No, he wasn't in the season at all.
No, obviously he was in the first one, and I seem to recall him popping up in the second one. But he only does like a season for like 10 minutes maximum.
Yeah, he's not in it a lot, like. Not in it a lot at all.
But then I suppose if he was in it a bit more, you'd need to make Huey a bit more grounded, because he'd be like, Huey, you've been gone for 6 months, no word. What the fuck you been up to? You know what I mean? I saw you on the news. You're dating Starlight, like.
Speaking of, I think you touched on it earlier on, which is really good, is how not just in this nothing's safe, whereas I mean like topics of like satire or like how gruesome things is or like how brutal things may be, but no character's safe for the narrative, which I think is really good. So in the first couple of episodes of this season, they're building up this potential love triangle between Huey, I think it's Alex, Supersonic, and like Starlight. They're building this love triangle between the three of them, and they don't even villainize Supersonic. They'll make him quite a likable guy.
I was waiting for him to turn on Starlight.
Was yeah, I thought that would have been quite good actually. But you think, you know what? It may be like Starlight does start like seeing like it's quite good because they're pushing a bit of rift between him and Starlight. You know, maybe she does start dating him and fucks him off or whatever. And next thing you know, Homelander's chopped him to bits.
Dismembered him, like he's just on a rooftop, just like bleh.
It, like again, another like narrative beat I didn't see coming was Homelander and Starlight being together for the cameras. That was really cool and smart.
Yeah, it was like Homelander on the spur of the moment, because he knows that Starlight is up in the approval ratings, and he's like, I need this because, you know, as I said, his weakness is his human element, and he needs to be loved. That's his weakness, and he's basically like, I want what she has, and basically, yeah, he's like, now we're dating, and that absolutely boosted their ratings, and that was everything he wanted. I just thought as well, talking about dismembered body on the roof, I see another great scene. So we mentioned the scene about the guy killing the shopkeeper, right, at the beginning of one of the episodes. Another really brilliant moment in one of the episodes is when Homelander has to go and stop a jumper, to stop someone from jumping off a roof. And he basically flies there, and he basically says to her, I'm fucking fed up with you people, just jump. Right? And she's like, I don't want to jump anymore. And he actually forces her to jump off, and she does. And like you see it all. You see the splatter. You see, it's, oh my god! It's like, it's such like a shocking scene, but again, it's so well done. The way, like, again, the actress that played the girl that was the jumper, and Anthony Starr, the scene, the script, everything that was brought together in that scene was just incredible. It was one of those scenes that I stayed with me because it's so surreal.
It's so fucked up and like surreal, but like what's even like, as we've said, is what's good about The Boys has so many references to draw on. And that particular scene, I think it's off the All-Star Superman comic run. And loads of other people have made this comment, to be fair, as well, so I won't take it. I'm not going to take credit saying I spotted it first. But that directly pulls from an All-Star Superman comic, a couple of panels, where Superman has this dilemma of he's got to talk this person down. And I think in the All-Star Superman, I think he may not even have like his powers for a day or something. Like, I might be wrong, I don't know, but he's got to talk this jumper down, this suicide person down, without using his powers. You know, it's just him talking. And obviously, spoilers, because Superman and he's a good guy. In the comic, he does talk it down. But as I say, like, Homelander is the complete parallel and like, the wrong version of Superman. And, yeah, like you've touched on, he does totally the opposite. And, like, he had a tipful, as opposed to being heroic, he had, like, delivered bad news of Stormfront's ironic suicide, and he's pissed off, and he just takes it out on that woman. And he thinks, "Fuck you, go and kill yourself." Which probably isn't the best thing to do because she kills herself, and it's just wrong, like, but so good to watch because, as you say, it's something you feel could happen because people are dicks in real life.
Yeah, it's kind of like a what if of actual cinema, in a way. You know what I mean? Because like in cinema, it's always a bit light-hearted, especially Disney. It tries to be a bit more light-hearted. There's always a happy ending. Whereas in The Boys, fuck your happy ending, right? This is the real world. This is how it actually goes down. You know what I mean? It's you gotta hats off to it, really. I mean, it's not gonna be everyone's cup of tea. That is an absolute granted, right? But if it's something that you can stick with and something that you can actually enjoy, no matter how vulgar or grotesque it may be, it is actually an incredible show, the way that it's done.
Like I said, I was writing my notes about it to discuss for like the episode now, and the more I thought about it, the more I had no real negatives.
Yeah.
My only negatives were just could have done with more of this, or could have done with this earlier so we had more time to explore it.
It's a bit like eating a birthday cake and then being like, "Can I have more?" It's like you had a whole birthday cake. You don't need more. Like, you know what I mean?
Particularly if you're a person who's feel like, oh, the MCU's getting a bit fucking boring now, or you feel like there's enough superhero stuff, but you feel like you want something which is going to like, rip into it, and you feel like it's going to be a bit more funny and outlandish. And more to the point, The Boys is like nothing else on TV at the moment.
No.
And so it's definitely worth a watch. But if you're listening now, like we should have done this really in non-spoilers, but definitely recommend it. It's great.
Well, what I can do is I can edit this bit in before we do spoilers.
Yeah. But if you want to fancy something a bit mental, a bit funny, a bit gruesome, a bit wrong, and like it gets in your psyche as well. Like there's a lot of, like you said at the start of like the episode, everyone has daddy issues. Like
Yeah, that's the simplicity of it. It becomes a bit more evident towards the end. You know, Huey's like, "Oh, I had daddy issues because of this," but it really he wasn't weak. He was actually very strong because he was there. He stuck around. And then Billy's got daddy issues because he wants his dad dead. And then Homelander's got daddy issues because he never had a dad. And then he finds out he has a dad, and then his dad actually doesn't want him because he's a crybaby bitch, right? And then Ryan's got a bit of daddy issues because he doesn't really know who his daddy is. And
exactly.
so yeah, daddy issues for everyone. And then of course there's loads of revenge going around because
majority of the cats. Mother's Milk has daddy issues because his dad got blown up by someone.
Yeah, by Soldier Boy.
By Soldier Boy. But now, as we say, it's absolutely gold. I was even thinking, to be fair, life got in the way. And like I was training, I had work, I was playing games or whatever. But I was even going to watch the finale again before we recorded.
I actually noticed as well, just after when the finale had finished and it was showing up next, it does that thing. There's an actual animated show called The Boys Presents Diabolical. So I was gonna have a look at that actually.
It's like an anthology series. I think it's like
there's like different art styles to each episode by the looks of it.
Yeah, it seems.
And it's not overly related.
It's like Marvel's What If.
Yeah.
It's like an animated thing, but like it's not really incredibly tied into the current show. I think like.
Yeah, I think there'll be like callbacks here or there, but it's not gonna alter any timelines or anything like that.
It's not going to impact the current continuity.
Yeah.
But there's The Boys. That's what we think of The Boys.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, there's a hell of a lot more to say, but there's only so much you can fit into an hour, or 72 minutes as it's currently standing.
But yeah, as Kim said, it's 8 hours, so we can fit everything in. But there's some of the main points we really love, or like the little things we could criticise or want more of. So my moment of the week, which I touched on, is you could have a whole episode on it, but I think like recently we've done like two convince me. I know you haven't watched it yet. Is Fall of and Thunder. Is like very decisive. I know for a lot of people. Always in the camp, and I know this won't surprise you because I love Taika Waititi, and you know that. I liked it. I liked it quite a lot. I can understand why people wouldn't like it. I think it's really amusing. I think it's hilarious. Like if you like Ragnarok, you're gonna love Thor: Love and Thunder. Put it that way.
Yeah, because it's got the same sort of vibe by the looks of it. Because like Thor, is it just Thor and then Thor: Dark World? Is it?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, like those two are quite similar. They're quite sort of standard, sort of Hollywood style esque. Then of course you had Guardians of the Galaxy, which was very sort of retro in the 80s vibes, and then sort of Thor Ragnarok was very symbolic of that, very similar, you know. And then you got like Wonder Woman 84, that again was quite similar to that whole retro feel because it clearly was a formula that was working. And then with this new one, Love and Thunder, they've obviously kept that same vibe. So I'd argue that like 1 and 2 are a different sort of. They're still Thor, but they're not like in the same sort of universe, if you know what I mean. They seem like two completely different art styles and directions. Granted, different directors, but you know these new ones, they feel like a revitalization of Thor. So I wouldn't be surprised if I saw another one. But I don't know the outcome of this one, so you'll have to tell me.
No, there could be. I don't know. You like, as you said, I don't want to spoil it too much, but like it could be a legacy character, it could be whatever. Well, I definitely think you should watch it. There might be another one, you don't know. But like you've said, they are the contrast between the first four and this one are totally different, but in a lot of good ways. I think like some of the emotional beats don't hit in this new one, but some of them really do. But like again, like I know it's people saying, "Oh, it's subjective" or whatever. Some of the comedy bits are absolutely gold. Some gags are overworked, and like that's coming from me. And I'm very generous with like what makes me laugh or what makes me chuckle.
You are, to be fair.
And then the performances, especially. And if you was to ask me like before he got cast, I would have said you like. But Christine Bale as like Gore the God Butcher is like sinister. He's very empathetic. He's like a lot of people have said this, but like I wholesomely like fully agree. He's the most sympathetic villain, MCU villain we've had since Killmonger, because his like motivations and what he does, and like the people you see, the gods you see in this film, it makes sense why Gore would want to kill all the gods. And the situation he's put in, to speak in very like vague terms, you would do what he does if you had the means to. And Christine, like, which is like, quite funny, he plays like a Joker-esque character in like one scene. Like his Gore the God Butcher like is really quite messed up and scary. So that's gold.
He channels Heath Ledger, does he?
Well, almost, yeah. In one scene in particular, which is really good. She's a great addition to it. Natalie Portman, her scene, this isn't spoilers because it's in the trailers, her scenes at Almighty 4 are good, particularly when it's towards the end of the film. But I really enjoyed it. And like, it's no end game. It's no, in that sense, because like Endgame had like 23 other films to build upon and like he called back on, and it's not as good as No Way Home. But I think No Way Home really relies on nostalgia, and again like that calls back on other films. But it's just a fun film. All of Thunder is a fun film. If you like want to have a good laugh watching a superhero film, to contrast to what we just discussed about The Boys, it's not brute. It's not particularly brutal, or it's not sexual or whatever, and it's not particular social commentary. It's more like light-hearted.
It's escapism.
It's escapism, like, and it's a good laugh, like. So I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I said my brother went to go see it the other week, and him and his girlfriend said they really enjoyed it as well. They said they weren't sure about it from the trailer, and to be honest, I wasn't sure about it from the trailer either. But I have heard good stuff about it. To be fair, so I'll have to give it a look. See.
Yeah, I would. What about you? What's particularly
So
caught your eye this week?
So my moment of the week is we've touched on it a few times in previous episodes, but there's the battle royale game called Apex Legends, right? And it was a game me and Mikey used to sweat heavily, especially during COVID times, and yeah, we would absolutely put all of our time and effort into that game. We've taken a bit of a break for a bit, just because it's got to the point where it's way too sweaty to play. And unless you play the game 24/7, you're just not good enough to play the game anymore. You can't just like chill and play it. Um, so we're taking a bit of a break for our own sanity. But they do like an esports championship, and it's called the ALGS, which is the Apex Legends Global Series. And I have watched every single ALGS there has ever been. I've watched every single game. I am
Yeah, you've
absolutely
watched
obsessed.
all of them, haven't
Yeah, like every championship there's ever been, every LAN, every just tournaments that were at home, the different playoffs, the qualifiers. I've watched them all, and it was the championships weekend just gone, and again I was absolutely straight on it. I was watching. If I couldn't watch them live, I'd watch them on demand, and I was just I think it's an incredible, like, some people say esports aren't proper sports, which you could kind of argue they are and they aren't, because you still have to train, you still have to put in the effort to do it, but you're only really training your mind and your hands for the controller or for the mouse and keyboard. Whereas other athletes, they've actually got to run around a track, so they've got to train the whole body, or they've got to well, you can all sports you got to train your whole body, so yeah. But so you could argue it's not a sport, it is a sport, but you still have to work, you still have to put the time in, you still have to train. But I'm just obsessed at the skill level that these people have and how they play. It's exactly the same as watching, your football or your cricket or your rugby or the Formula One. It's the same as watching those sports on telly. You're watching professionals do the job.
That's the
In this
fascinating.
instance, yeah, you're watching the professionals, play in these competitions, and I am absolutely blown away by the skill levels, because there'll be some people. I mean, we do it when we watch sports anyway, but when you're watching the competition, you're like, oh, I wouldn't have rotated that way. I would have gone this way and that way. I'd have taken that fight, and I'd have done this and I'd done that. And it's like, yeah, but in that situation, would you have done it, Kieran? Nah, because I'd have fucking took the tail between my legs and went, fuck it, boys, we're dead. Let's Valcourt and get the fuck out of here.
Or in my
yeah.
case and your case as well. Yeah, you would have done this, but you would have died 5 minutes ago because you would have got wrecked by them.
Yeah,
It's,
exactly.
I
It's
think,
like
as you
they're
say, the most interesting thing I find about it, and like I know a lot of less geeky people do this with football or basketball or whatever, is that you think I like participating in that particular sport. So for us, is when we play Apex, and you think, bloody hell, I've put my hours into this game. I think I'm good at it, or like I enjoy playing it. And then you watch them doing it, and they're doing it on a totally different playing field, quite literally. Like
yeah.
they're like some of like not just obviously their skill of like get their headshots they get or like the plays they get, but it's also like their method of thinking or the rotations they do or their lowdown.
Well, the different team comps of the different legends that they play, because this particular championship has been the biggest like change in legend plays. Because I mean, early in the beginning, it was Pathfinder, Watson, Wraith. They were like the staple of the team compositions, right? And then Gibraltar became a big part of it, so it became like Gibraltar, Wraith, Bloodhound. That was a big composition, and then now it's really mixed and really varied. I mean, we've got Sears, Valkyrie's become the number one pick because of rotating, but you've got your Seer, your Valkyrie, you got Gibraltar, then you've also got Caustic, you've also got Horizon, um, I'm trying to think of other legends now. We did have a Bloodhound. We did have a couple of Wraiths. We've had some
Yeah,
Ashes. We had Mad Maggie as well. We even had a lifeline in one game. I don't know if someone accidentally chose her in the select screen or what, but they actually did really well. He got like at least 3 kills or 2 kills, I think it was, on the character, because we jumped on board and everyone was like, "Holy shit, we got a lifeline!" Like the commentators were, and we watched them get a kill, so it was like perfect timing to like join the stream as such for that moment. But it just as a competition as a whole, it was brilliant. And what I really like seeing, especially when you see all the different competitors and stuff on the stage, like this is the first time we had like a studio audience as well. So like hearing the cheers and the roars and stuff from the audience was really like heartwarming, because there was like one team, because of COVID restrictions and getting visas in order to fly to America to do this championship. Some teams were left as duos because they couldn't get substitutions or whatever in. And the one team, Pulverex, completed the championships as a duo, right? And they obviously, as a duo, they were getting like wrecked and wrecked and wrecked. But then they just had like a resurgence every now and again in a couple of games, and they kept getting like solid placement, and they managed to make it through to the losers bracket number 2. They had no right in being there, and the way the audience cheered for them was like insane. Whenever they were on screen and they were like they got a knock or something, like people were absolutely insane because they were like the underdogs. Like everyone was cheering for them, even if they were killing your favorite team. You were just like, get into the fucking top 10 and you're in, you're through. Obviously, like they didn't make it to the final, but they made it into the losers brackets number 2, which was quite, it was like a massive achievement for them because they beat out like 20 other teams.
That
And
in
then
particular, that like their duos and their like smashing other teams like that, it's just baller. Like,
yeah, like a testament to their ability. My favorite, obviously, because like we're European, I want to cheer on a European team, and like I really wanted IG to do well because they were doing really well. But my heart, my soul goes to GMT because they're my boys. Back when they were GSD, then they were GYD, and then they were GOD, and now they were GMT. Plus, they were Cooler at one point, and then they were Aqualix at another. See, I know all of it because I've been watching it from the start. I
I know
know
you
all
was
of it.
watching it, but I never knew you watched like the entire thing.
Yeah, yeah, mate, I've watched it all. I'm obsessed. I know all of it. But Nasky, Strafey, and Dell, they're my team. But unfortunately, Strafey, who is Ukrainian, I stand with Ukraine. He wasn't able to make it out, so they had a sub which in Rambo, which was a fella from Florida, and oh my god, he was a brilliant substitute for the team because they could have won the entire championship. They were so close, right? And GSD, they've won like their tournaments. They were like formidable opponents, and they could easily have won this championship, but they didn't quite get it. But then, if it wasn't a European team, the team that won was they're called Dark Zero, but they were called Reignite, and they're an Australian team, and they've got Zero Sharky and Jen Burton, and Jen Burton is quite possibly one of the most famous sort of gamepad players. You know, he plays on a console controller, but on a PC, and he's like the most cracked. He's absolutely insane. His recoil control is second to none, and he was unfortunately not in the last tournament because of COVID restrictions. He had to sit on the sidelines and watch while a sub helped his teammates, and they actually won the previous playoffs. Right, so Reignite won the playoffs. They come into this championship. Jen Burton's finally back on the team. There's no COVID for any of them on the team, and they win again. They win the whole championship again. Like, absolutely hats off to them. I'm like really happy for them.
What was this Mad Maggie comp they're doing now? Who's Mad Maggie and who's Sia?
Mad Maggie, Sear, and Watson, or Gibraltar, or even Newcastle. It depends. But it was Team Empire that was. It's a Russian team that was running that comp. But they weren't able to get visas to come into America to do the championship. So then it used to be Kick Esports, but it's now AIM Esports. they took their place instead. So they were running the Maggie comp and like absolutely wrecking house, but they weren't able to make it. So they didn't quite make it. But I know TSM ran with Maggie and Seer, and no, Maggie, Seer, Valkyrie. Yeah, every team's got a Valkyrie. Yeah, so it was Maggie, Seer, Valkyrie. And they were doing quite well with that in scrims and qualifications. But once they came straight onto the LAN, straight into the tournament, they just didn't quite connect. And then they went back to the standard Jibby Val Caustic comp. But then they did bring out the Seer a little bit, but they didn't really play with Maggie.
It's just also, again, like another like interesting thing I like is because those players are so good, they use the compositions of legends you wouldn't think of because they can. And then you think they're good ideas, like.
Yeah, they've got the skill and the ability to do it. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your composition is or the legends you play. It's just play well as a character you enjoy playing as. Don't just because everyone's playing Gibraltar, I need to play Gibraltar. Just find a legend that you enjoy playing as, and you'll actually play better because you enjoy playing with that character. At the end of the day, and you'll just perform better. Because at the end of the day, you're always in a 3v1, so play as a character that you feel most comfortable to 3v1 in. Because you're always on your own.
They've charged ahead.
Yeah. Sounds like you, that, doesn't it?
That's this week's episode of ScreenHour.
I'm sorry to talk in your ear off about Apex there, but yeah, I'm mad passionate about Apex Legends Championship.
Kieran treats ALGS like a football hooligans World Cup, to be fair. So
yeah.
I enjoy it, but like I'll watch the highlights.
Yeah, it's a bit much to watch because there's like a standard stream on its own is like 4.5 to 5 hours long, and that's just like 6 games.
It's like watching WrestleMania. It's like 4 or 5 hours, like a pay-per-view. Like.
Yeah, I think I've watched over 24 hours of ALGS in the past 5 days.
But no, thank you for listening this week. We appreciate it as usual. And yeah, as usual, share it, listen, review us if you can as well. Any feedback is greatly appreciated, especially if you want to give us like outstanding positive review and then all of a sudden we're on the top of Spotify under like film and TV. That would be pretty gold, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and if we are in that instance, then of course we start doing shout outs.
It's like, yeah, for some reason, if you start giving us 5-star reviews, the next thing you know, like we're on the front pages of apps, you will definitely get a shout out.
If you give us positive reviews, you could be in a chance to win £1 million. You could.
If we ever had £1 million.
Yeah, but you could.
It's like there's more chance of getting struck by lightning by twice, but you could.
You could. Anyway, appreciate you guys for listening in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thank you very much. Have a good time.
Bye.